But as you see, we have five great panelists here to chat about their best kept sourcing secrets. Um, Maybe they won't give too much away, but they're going to give you enough to get your hands dirty and learn how they approach deal sourcing. So appreciate you all taking a little bit of your time out on a Wednesday afternoon to listen and engage with us. We have a lot of content to cover and hope to spend a little bit time at the end, about 15 minutes, for an open Q&A that we'll use through the Zoom system. And if anything else comes up in between, we have Delaney from Grada's marketing team, who graciously organized this event, will be moderating and may interrupt me or jump in if there are pressing questions. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to start us off with a couple of slides, but I'd actually like to start us off with introductions. I could start. My name is Nevin Raj. I'm one of the co-founders and COO of Grada, and I will be today's moderator for our discussion. It's under the Momenta team.
Thanks, Nevin. I'm Doug Harp. I'm the managing partner of advisory at Momenta Partners. In our advisory practice, we work with investors, industrial enterprises, and innovators in digital industry, helping them accelerate their time to value. We're all practitioners with deep industry expertise and decades of operating experience. And we help our customers with their digital product and service strategies, as well as their inorganic and M&A services. Bill?
Yep, Bill Osich. I did a great job of covering things. Strategy partner at Momenta. I spent my time both developing products, but also working on strategy and corporate development at Wind River Intel.
And we're excited to partner with Momenta on this webinar. They have a very unique business model, as Doug had mentioned, being an M&A advisor, an investor, and in executive search. And they've really become experts on sourcing and actually using the Grada platform. So they're going to help guide the conversation today with some of our private equity panelists, who I will now let introduce themselves as well. Sean, do you want to start?
Great. Thanks, Nevin. My name is Sean Houseworth. I'm a vice president at Bertram Capital. I've been with Bertram for 6 years. Bertram's been in existence for 16 years. We're investing out of our fourth fund, which is a $940 million fund, and we invest across 3 verticals: business services, consumer, and industrial.
Great. And then I'm Robert Munch. I'm also with Bertram Capital. I'm the origination analyst for the team, working with both Sean and the investment team, as well as our sourcing team to help find and source deals from a proprietary standpoint. Been with the company for about a year, and before that was at Baird for the investment banking side.
And I'm Abhiram. I am an associate at Aura Partners. We are a industrial decarbonization focused private equity fund. We've been around for coming up on 5 years now. We manage about $1.5 billion of capital out of 2 funds. And I've been with Aura for about 2 years now.
Great to have you all on. And we've picked our panelists as some of the leading private equity firms in not only their industries, but also in the way that they find deals, partner with entrepreneurs, founders, and management teams, and have some of the best outcomes in the industry. So we're excited to have both Momenta, Bertram, and Aura here to join us and go deep on how you find deals. So one of the most challenging pieces in sourcing, as we've heard, is actually finding the right company. And we're going to talk today about how do you actually go out and find the right companies for you and do that in an efficient way. Then, towards the end, we'll talk about, once you've identified companies, how you actually reach out and engage with founders and management teams on investment conversations. And then finally, we'll leave this open to audience Q&A, time permitting. So to get started, I just want to frame the different ways that you search and talk about what we call the mindset of deep searching, really going beyond what you could find in a industry or what you can find on the surface to discover more companies. In today's webinar, we'll start off by talking about how you can use Grata to actually run a web search and find companies that may not be in a defined industry category or defined list, and go really deep and in a very simple way, find the right companies for you. And then we'll also talk about similar company searching and how machine learning algorithms can help you find a universe of companies that are right for you, even if you don't know the words to type in your search and the words to put on the screen, but you know a few examples or a few companies that you know would be right for your search. And we're going to juxtapose this with the ways that our partners, Bertram and Momenta, all search to uncover these optimal outcomes and optimal targets. So where I want to start off is I want to pass the mic to Abhi to talk a little bit about a thesis that our partners is pursuing now, and a little bit about the thesis, why they're interested in the space, and then we'll run into how Abhi searched for these companies pre-Grata and how he runs these types of searches to find these companies while using Grata.
Great. Thanks, Nevin. The topic I wanted to discuss today is the bioplastics. So I'm sure many of you know, but for those who aren't as familiar with the space, plastics derived from crude oil are a major source of pollution and emissions today in the manufacturing industry, and is really used in a lot of different industries, right? I mean, we use plastics almost everything we buy, whether it's consumer products, food packaging, things like that. And being able to come up with similar quality materials that are derived from environmentally friendly sources, sustainable would go a long way to cleaning up the industry, reducing pollution, in our water, in our water sources and things like that. So we here at ARA believe that kind of bioplastics are this next generation material that can really help decarbonize a lot of different sectors at once. So we see a lot of potential in that space. And so for us in particular, we as a fund like to go after companies that are generally, early to middle stage companies. They've been around for anywhere between 5 and 10 years. They're generally, a lot of them are mom and pop businesses. Many of them have started up from a capital perspective, and they need $100 million capital to so that's really kind of the sweet spot of companies that we like to take a look at. And so for us, we're really interested in finding a company that is differentiated in the bioplastics. That can be from, they have a unique technology that allows them to produce bioplastics at a lower cost compared to their competitors, or they provide a product using bioplastics that is not currently available in the market. So we've looked at a number of companies using microorganisms to produce bioplastics, using plant-based, and also creating materials that are not only derived from bio-based sources, but are degradable and compostable. That's a really feature of these materials. And so that's kind of a background to the search. Should we go to the search, Nevin?
Yeah, Abhi, that's great. I just want to say I find it really interesting how there's been a lot of talk around ESG and sustainable investing, but I love how our partners is actually putting this into practice by developing a thesis around what will really help the environment and really putting capital to work. It's much needed. So that's awesome to hear about your thesis. Let's start off with, let's actually compare, let's just say you didn't have Grata and you were running a search for bioplastics. How would you normally go about doing this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, in the old days, right, we would go to Google, probably just type in bioplastics. That's literally the first way we would look at it. And there are a number of, industry publications, industry trade groups, a news article, for example. A lot of these companies, especially those that may be venture-backed, like to issue a lot of press releases, right? And so that's kind of how we find out about, okay, what are the companies that are in the space today, and what stage are they? And as you can see, right, it's something like bioplastics, which is not only a focus for investors, but is also significant academic focus, significant focus by entrenched chemical companies. It can be a little bit difficult to find opportunities that fit our, right, because we're not really looking for the company that wants to make a $10 billion valuation, right, or a SPAC candidate. We're looking for companies that are ready to go to stage 2 of their growth plan. They need equity, but they're also, they also recognize that they have a lot of distance to go in terms of growth over time. And so we're really looking for these companies that the market is a little bit has overlooked.
Yep.
Right? Not the flashy Silicon Valley type companies. We're looking for the Iowa, right? The company that's not on people's radars, but that would be a good fit for us because we provide, not only the industry expertise, but financial resources and a lot of other operational resources to the companies that we need. So kind of going this Google route doesn't really help because many of these companies that we look for don't have a strong digital presence.
So let's run this in Grata. How, first of all, is there even an industry category or taxonomy for bioplastics?
Not really. I would probably say, it's tough because it can fall under a lot of different industries, right? It could be, chemicals, it could be, right, materials and manufacturing, and it can fall under a lot. So because it's not just plastic and it's not just, plant-derived materials, right? It's a combination of things.
So how do you go beyond below the surface? Because if you can't find this in a predefined industry, it's hard to search.
Yeah. So I've honestly just found the keyword search to be the best approach, actually. Just typing in bioplastics itself, with the one word, generates a ton of results. You can see here 600 companies, right? All we need is one company, right? So just probability perspective, right? Everybody doing the math at home, that's, it shouldn't be, that difficult to find an opportunity that interests you, right, as an investor. There's got to be at least one out of the companies here that is a good fit for you. And I'm sure many of you are looking at this list and saying, starting with the top, right, we see a lot of publicly traded multi-billion-dollar companies. That's not our sweet spot, right? So what's great about this tool is that we can then filter out companies that we want to see, right? I'm not interested in publicly traded companies because they're going to command a pretty high valuation. I'm not super interested in companies that are located in developing countries. That's just not our investment thesis. So we really, constrain ourselves to the U.S. and Europe by and large. And then when we do that, you can see already that the universe of companies has dropped to a more manageable list, right? And then we can start to go through and say, if we go down looking. Yeah, so you see here, so you can see the tag here, it says investor backed. And then there are tags that say bootstrapped. Those tags are super useful for us as well, because that's again an indication for us about value. A company that is investor backed, like one of us, is probably going, we know what they will ask for. Okay? We can take a guess at how much they got business, what they want to sell it for. Whereas bootstrap probably means that, hey, this is a company that would really value a long-term sort of, would be open to partnering with a long-term group like us. And they're probably more realistic about valuation. So we go a little bit one step further and step into those companies first. We start with bootstrap companies, then we don't look out there, then we move to investor-backed companies. But we like to start with our bootstrap.
Makes a lot of sense. And you'd even said within bioplastics, you try to find companies with differentiated products and something unique to what they're offering. Can you provide an example or two of what you're finding within bioplastics, and we can show how you can get even deeper in the search?
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that we're really excited about is bags, right? Sounds boring, but bioplastic bags is a really underserved. And so a
Really
lot of the bioplastic companies, tend to focus on materials and things like that. But we think that there's a big market in bags. So, as you can see, right, when you go to bags, suddenly the universe shrinks even more. Now we're dealing with a lot of companies that I'm sure none of you have ever heard of, right? And that's really exciting because now we have a list of companies that are sweet spot for us. You can see the number of people, right? Personnel wise, that's great. They're not massive businesses. They probably only have one facility. They're looking for people like us. So this is a great example of research that we've done that has yielded a lot of results like this.
super interesting. I love how you started off by defining this topic related as a theme within this topic of environmental sustainability, and then dug deeper into some of the firmographics that matter, and then into a specific product line like bags. So appreciate you sharing that, Abhi. And now I want to actually try another search in a adjacent space, and I'd love for Sean to tell us at Bertram, tell us a little bit about your investment thesis in electric vehicles.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nevin. So at Bertram, we operate a thesis-driven approach to our platform investments and can range across a variety of industries. And one that we have been spending a significant amount of time on over the past couple of years has been in the electrification ecosystem. I think we can all understand there's a lot of tailwinds in the market, from private funding to public funding and government spending, that has been driving a lot of spending in the space and has sparked a lot of venture-backed players in the market space who've raised a lot of money and have novel concepts and ideas. We are a growth-oriented private equity firm, but similar to Abhi, we're not investing in the startups or high-growth investments. We're looking for established platforms who serve a diverse customer base, have specialized productization, and can benefit from those tailwinds. So as we think about the Teslas of the world or the Panasonics of the world, or the charge points of the world, there's a lot of specialized components that go into their offering, and they rely on a lot of suppliers who offer products and services that power the ultimate product that they're selling to businesses or consumers. And so as we've been thinking about thesis-oriented searches within the electric vehicle space, we've been focused on those specialized component engineered companies that are manufacturing products that eventually can be utilized by those larger companies that I mentioned previously. So we've been focused on the electric vehicle space as one of those core subsegments of the market. And Bobby and the team on the origination and capital markets group has been partnering hand in hand with Grata on some of those searches. So I think he'll be best suited to walk us through that.
Yeah, Sean, I appreciate you sharing that. I also, again, both you and Abhi talked about how you're not necessarily looking for the venture-backed, sexy startup, but I still find what you're searching really interesting, actually really cool, because you're supporting the future of where at least the automotive industry is going. So while you're not backing Tesla, it seems like you're backing the companies that make that possible.
Exactly.
Really cool. So Bobby, why don't you tell us, so Sean's come up with this thesis with the rest of the team, and now you're working with Sean to actually go in and find these companies. Tell us a little bit about how you actually run this search and how you get into the weeds here.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks, Nevin. What our kind of next steps are in regards to the search are exactly what you guys see here. We go to this page, and we, like Avram mentioned, we really like the keyword function when it comes to the web search model. So like Sean mentioned, charging stations and component would be keywords we like to add, kind of just to get a start for a list. And just like Nevin did, it's an and search, so it's including both. We want to see, everything that's out there, along with electric vehicles being kind of in that circle. So it gives us a really manageable list right here, only about 228 companies that we can start breaking down. And then from there, we tend to, in this case, we're more looking for, let's say, a manufacturing operating model. So the companies that are actually building the pieces, we're looking for within the sector. So now, this gives us a much more directed search of 33. So within here, it's very similar to how Abram went through it, where we're looking for more US based companies. So focusing our search in the US mainly, and then also, trying to get the smaller size levels. So we might go into the employee count being, sub 2,000 employees as a good benchmark, just to see how narrow we can get this list. And now it's down to 16. So this gives me a lot more ability to see, using Grata, all these specific companies in this sector that we want to take a deeper look at. And it allows us to collaborate on a high level, back and forth with the investment team, with Sean, the rest of the team, on which one of these are falling directly under what we're looking for. So with this search, we tend to look at, are they bootstrapped or maybe even a subsidiary up in the top right corner. We will mainly focus on the bootstrap within the private sector. So as Nevin's pointing to, the ownership and funding will ideally be private, and we'll check that box to start that search.
Great. So, Bobby, you've really narrowed down to 16 companies. And we know that to do deals, you also need volume and you need more companies. So I'm actually going to pass the baton now to Momenta, who knows the electric vehicle space inside out and can talk to us about how I think of this as like a pearl and an oyster. They start off small and they expand and see more, whereas you started off broad and you narrowed it down to fewer. So I'll pass it to Bill to talk a little bit about the way that Momenta searches for something
Yeah.
for a similar topic like EV and related components.
Great, Nevin. Thanks a lot. I mean, zooming way out, first off, our clients have the same goal. They're trying to find this off the radar companies. They're not trying to buy the next VC backed company. They're trying to find companies that are bootstrapped or maybe needing the next growth round on that. And so our bottoms up approach takes our industry knowledge of the marketplace and gets us really to a targeted set of companies, or at least a list, as Nevin said it, much faster. And so for demonstration, we're going to look at one of the subsystems in EVs that's really critical for both consumer and especially commercial, is telematics, because the blending of telematics in there is important there for not only monitoring what the vehicle is doing or where it is, but also how it's operationally working there. And this can be very critical for the discussion we had just now about how does the telematics information intersect with the charging information as part of that. So we're going to do a quick demo of this approach here and try to find telematics companies that are centered around EV. And normally what we would also do is kind of, have some guardrails for their client about size, but we'll arbitrarily pick something. So Nevin, let's start off with finding similar companies, and let's pick, it's not a company we go after, but let's pick a public company that has a lot of the information on their website potentially that intersects with this goal here. So let's put in mixed telematics.
This one?
MIXT, it should be that one, yep. Exactly.
Okay.
And and what we're trying to do not necessarily is to look at what they have there, but let's go find similar companies there. So this is the similar company search on that. Now we want to narrow down this list a little bit. So let's make sure we have EV in there. So let's put in EV or electric vehicles, just to make sure we're focusing on that. And you can see on the right side, the summaries will be much more concentrated around EV stuff. And this is the first magic, there's some obvious companies out there, but let's put in some companies that are a little bit more off the radar there. Actually, before we do that, let's make sure we're concentrating on location too. So let's put in location as US and Europe. And I think as other people do, let's narrow down the number of employees there. So let's go to 500 employees there. Again, we're trying to look for, yeah, perfect.
And actually, I'll toggle this to a mention because we're looking at telematics companies that may mention electric vehicles just to go a little
Great.
bit deeper on the search.
Great. So let's grab a few of these companies and create our first list. Like let's take Fleetistics, which talks about electric vehicles in there. Let's take, I think there's let's create a new list that's part of that.
All right, Fleetistics.
Right. Let's see if there's ABEX or Green Road. That's a good one too. They talk about EVs and how telematics intersects with that there. And let's see, maybe there's another one in there. It looks interesting. ABEX, I think that's a good one too. Let's try that one. So we
Okay.
got now this list here. Now let's go to that list. Because the list now becomes, there's an AI algorithm behind this find similar companies that is going through the website and trying to find the right information. So let's discover similar companies to this list here. So what that does is now suddenly give us a lot more precise list of companies versus using necessarily keywords here. So let's make sure we're filtering down on the web search to EVs, the locations, US and Europe, and the size of the company. And this voice activated AI is great. I love it.
The future. So this is coming out next.
It's a new feature. It's a Nevin AI. I love it. So this will pop up some more companies here that we can add to it. And again, as I'm looking through these companies, we're using our knowledge of the industry a bit, and looking at the companies, looking at what their descriptions are, and ensuring that this master list. Okay, so let's see. Skim down through there. Probably, let's see. Fuel Oil, that makes ownership of electric vehicles you manufacture easier than ever. That looks like Autonomo. I know Autonomo. I think that's another good EV area there. I think Fleetster maybe in that list. Well, anyway, let's just start with. I mean, this is really just showing the principles. There's Fleetstar. Let's see it down there. Let's add that in there also. So let's add those companies in. So now we got a little bigger list, and then we can just repeat and rinse this process to go back to that list, and then go back to that list there, Nevin, and just do a
Yep, it actually updates when you click add to the list.
Perfect,
It's
perfect.
actually refreshed.
perfect. So
You're right.
and
You
so
know,
just that, and we're not going to do this ad infinitum, but so what we're doing here is iteratively creating a list based on the Grata looking at their sites, leveraging companies that are similar to the companies we're trying to look for. And we found this methodology actually to be fairly fast, as long as you have a little bit of knowledge about some companies in the space. They don't have to be the companies you want to target, and knowledge about the industry. And you just imagine iterating on this. After this, we'll have a list, and then we'll use that list to then do some more reach outs. We'll probably look at the websites a little bit more too, just to make sure we might drop a few or add a few. But in general, that's our approach towards finding companies.
very interesting. I think it's very unique in that you're really taking this bottom-up approach and actually using the machine learning that we saw working in real time, recommending to you how to search. And we find that there are firms that come in with a thesis that can search top down, and others that have expertise and know a few companies and want to search bottom up. When you marry these two views, you really get the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Finding companies isn't everything, as we know. That's half the battle. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you actually engage with founders and CEOs and management teams to source deals and get deals done? And I'll turn this one to Doug to chat a little bit more about this.
thanks, Nevin, and Bill, jump in when you want to. But yeah, I think it's interesting because we signed up for Grata originally to find companies, right? The hard to find, all the stuff that everybody's been talking about. What we have found is we use it significantly for both outreach and all the way through the process. Because if you think about what we do, we're helping customers try to put plays together, connect the dots, string of pearls. So we're trying to understand not just individual companies, but also related companies. And we use this significantly in our outreach as we're starting to outreach to the marketplace because, as everybody on this call knows, outreach isn't the easiest to bootstrap companies or founder-led companies, the ones that we're all trying to engage with. They're fairly defensive, especially if investors come searching after them. So we use a lot of this Grata data in our outreach, all the way through our discovery and diligence process as we're helping our customers move through that process. Because all the way through that process, we're trying to understand our tie back to our deal thesis. And at the same time, what other potential companies could come into play as, we might buy a core company and then build off of it with 2 or 3 others. And so what we really like about Grata is it connects us across, allows us to connect almost like the list you saw from Bill there. Allows us to connect from maybe core players to add-ons and tuck-ins that you might consider. So I think that's from a practical standpoint, that's what we use it for. Just a quick thing. We're in digital. We're here. Our sole focus is IoT, AI, digitalization of industry. And so it is quite interesting to kind of be eating your own dog food and using tools like this that are both helping us find digital companies and at the same time using some of the same technologies that they're using. So Bill, you have anything to add on to that?
No, just a one comment. I mean, and I didn't bring it up as we're doing that search, but usually when we're doing is find similar companies, there's some serendipity of finding companies that are related to that. And there was a company I saw fly by, which I forgot to mention, that helps manage charging stations related to the telematics information. So that actually can then spin off, going back to Doug said, a string of pearls. Maybe there is a telematics company plus a charging company plus this that you then fold into the EV company. And now you got a differentiated EV company because they have all these other pieces in there versus just a vehicle company. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit of following through that string of pearls part.
Very interesting.
Back to you, Nevin. So.
Yeah, Doug, appreciate that. We'd love to hear that. It kind of sounds like the summary is you build up expertise in a space, you discover the companies around it, and then you get yourself in the ecosystem to be a thought partner and a leader with your multiple lines of business to really be able to understand when a company is ready for an investment or M&A activity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good summary. Yeah.
And how about let's flip it back to Sean and the Bertram team. What's your approach? I know it's challenges, like, again, you found these great EV companies. Bobby says, here's our list of 35. How do you actually engage with this community and get in front of founders?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think Doug hit the nail on the head in terms of there's a lot of outreach going to these companies and people are very defensive about their secret sauce and what makes their company differentiated and what makes it special and interesting to the community. And, we are in a very, very competitive environment where capital is now a commodity and there's a lot of people reaching out to these companies, whether it's private equity firms, investment bankers, brokers, et cetera. And so what we have found to be successful in terms of our outreach and contact with founders and CEOs is that myself or someone else from the investment team who helped develop this thesis, worked on the Grata searches, starts to better understand the industry and the ecosystem. We can speak somewhat fluently about the industry and, can come to those companies with our homework done and talk about why we find this company relative to others in the industry interesting and why we think it might be a good investment opportunity. And so being able to come to that founder or come to that CEO and say, I work on the investment team. I will be with you from beginning of the investment to the end. I'm not going to hand you off to somebody else who's going to, help you with the transaction or help you with the operational improvement. We just try to say, I'm going to be your partner and going to be able to help you through this, and also provide you kind of strategic value and guidance over the course of the investment period. That's, I think, gets our foot in the door. And then what we've done to try to differentiate ourselves in the private equity community is that we've developed a group of internal technologists that we call Bertram Labs, which is a team of 20 software developers, 5 digital marketing experts, and a data scientist who work across our portfolio on ERP integrations, website redevelopment, paid search, social media, big data analytics. Those type of resources we have found to be extraordinarily impactful, and it gets the attention of these potential partners, founders, and CEOs who get this type of outreach all the time from folks who may know the industry, but they also want to know, what can you bring to the table as a value-added partner? And so bringing the folks from Bertram Labs in and having conversations with founders about how to accelerate product roadmaps, how to accelerate development, that gets the attention of founders. And having all that information that we get from Grata, from the searches, and understanding the industry and bringing that and combining it with our own unique resources is a compelling tale that we're able to tell potential targets.
Yeah, and just to recap, I find that really compelling. Even just as a founder, I've heard from other founders in the community that you don't want to educate an investor on your business. You want them to come in knowing the business and have a constructive conversation. And so I really like what you pointed out of come in doing your homework, know the business, know the industry, know why it's unique. Have an end-to-end process of minimize handoffs, make sure you're getting the right people in front of the management team early on, and then add value at the end. And those are 3 pieces where we often see when people try to source may have 1 or 2 of those components, but rarely have it end to end the way Bertram has it. And I'll switch it over to Abhi now. Tell us a little bit about Ara's approach. I know you're actually a little more specialized than maybe even Bertram, and you really focus within a niche to start off with. But tell us about what's your secret? How are you getting meetings?
Yeah, I think our approach is similar in the sense we're cold calling companies, but it's different in that, as I said in the beginning, right? We're not looking at companies that are getting thousands of phone calls from other funds, right? The companies that we're going after are small, mom and pop, generally not necessarily. They may not even know what a private equity fund is, right? And so that's the kind of landscape that we step into. And so our sourcing approach is a little bit different. What we love about Grata is that a lot of companies have email address, or a lot of the listings, the database have email addresses and phone numbers. And so that allows us a easy way to make first contact, right? As opposed to calling like the general 1-800 number at a company's phone line. We're able to contact key decision makers of the company, over phone or over email directly. And for companies where that doesn't exist, right, Grata's got a feature where you can actually ask to, have somebody scrub that information or get that information. So we find that really valuable. But once we make first contact, we usually open up by saying, we're, who we are. We're Ara. We say investment fund, focused on decarbonization technologies, and we kind of go into our sales pitch. We say, you're running great business. You're in a sector that we think has a lot of potential, whether it's bioplastic, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's 3D printing, right? It doesn't matter. So we say there's a great potential in this industry. We've done a great job. And we think that you have the potential to expand nationally or expand globally. And that's where we can help you, right? It's all about saying, what can we do for you as the owner of this business, right? Because you are in effect asking the owner to sell the business to you, but at the same time, you need to sell yourself sell your mission, sell what value you're providing as a fund to somebody who's never needed one, right? Ever, for the whole lifetime of the business. And so that's kind of how we frame our conversations. We say we can provide a lot of money for you to expand. We're great partners. We can put you in front of the customers that you've been trying to get in front of, for a long time. And we'd love for you to stay involved in the business. I think that's another thing where a lot of founders that we talk to are apprehensive because they think, well, so-and-so fund is going to come in and kick me out, right? Or they're going to take over the decision making and I'm not going to have a say anymore in the business like I used to. That's not how we operate. We make that very clear that we are investing in this business because of you, right? You got this business from nothing to where it is today. We want you to stay on and help us take it to the next level, right? We're just providing, we're just a bank account for you, the network and things like that. And so that's the conversation that we lead in with, and that's a really we find a lot of receptivity among founders and management teams that we talk to. We're big believers in connecting with people. The in-person meeting also really helps. That's why the geography feature is really important to us because it allows us to put companies that, in and around the geographical area where we operate. So it's easy for us to actually interface with each other face to face and make that personal connection and get them to build trust. So that's really kind of the way that we've leveraged Grata to reach out to companies. It's been super helpful.
That's great. It really sounds like you spend a lot of time up front finding out the niche of the niches that no one's looking into. So you're getting higher response rates off the bat, and then you're sharing the value add, growth, and how you actually partner with companies, not just acquire and take the company in a direction that the management team didn't envision, but more so accelerating them to a place they want it to be. Great. I'll ask you all for one final piece of advice before we move into the Q&A, and that is, if you had one piece of advice for someone in the audience on how to source more effectively, what's your takeaway? Does Momenta want to go first?
How to source more effectively, I would say we've probably hit on it. It's both having the right tools and technologies that Grata really provides a foundational piece. Having the market knowledge and know what plays you're trying to put together. And third, it's diligence. You got to be diligent at this process. You have to turn over a lot of rocks. You got to work a lot of cycles, and so you really have to mix all three of those things together in order to be successful.
Yeah, I won't repeat what Doug said. I agree with everything there. I think the other element was brought out here is really making sure you can communicate with the target well. Either you do the research or you work with experts like us to be able to have that API, that communication with the target, and make them genuinely seeing that they can create more value through this opportunity than on their own. I think that's the other addition there.
Yeah, from the Bertram perspective, I would just say there is hesitancy from the founders and sellers to give away too much information, but once you get them in the door, you've done your homework and you've told a good story. And when you talk to the founders, I always find them to be very forthcoming, and they're always excited about talking about their business. And even if you don't know, you'll never know as much as the founder about the business, but bringing ideas to the table in that initial conversation and demonstrating value, even if the ideas are ultimately rejected by the founder, which for us 9 out of 10 times is not a great idea, but if we can bring one good idea to the initial conversation, I think that really sparks an interest between us and the founder to continue the conversation, because we can demonstrate our value as a partner, both from a capital perspective, but also from a strategic perspective.
Yeah, and I would piggyback off what Sean said. knowing your strategy as a firm is the key, and then being able to communicate that with the target and your search process will definitely help give you, the guidance to finding, ideal companies to get in touch with, and kind of hopefully have easier conversations because you've done your diligence, and also you're able to portray, your strategy, our strategy for Bertram in a clear manner that they can, understand and see where the value is.
And last but not least,
Yeah, and I would say from our perspective, I think our key is being creative. I think if you really want to get an angle in or find a really attractive opportunity, you have to be willing to what you're searching for. Don't just use what are the trendy terms, right? Unless you have a massive checkbook, in which case, that's the kind of investment you want. But if you're a middle market, upper market sized fund, and you're going after those opportunities that the big players haven't spotted yet, you have to be creative in how you approach exposure to an industry you want, while at the same time finding something that has that unique angle, or kind of a process or product that maybe is not obvious to you, or obvious to the market, but is really impactful and has huge growth potential. But just having a good handle on the market, as everybody said, but thinking about how can I take a creative lens to entering this market and getting that.
well, you've heard from some of the best searchers, best private equity firms, advisors out there. I'll open the floor now to Q&A for anyone from the audience who wants to ask a general question or ask our panelists something in specific. And you can submit questions through Zoom. There's a Q&A button, and those will be able, moderators, so myself and the panelists will be able to see them. Okay, I've got one submitted. One example, so someone from the audience asked, can you share an example of how you provide value in the founder outreach process? And I think what they mean here, you've talked about how you provide value generally in a deal cycle, but actually in the outreach process itself.
I can take that first. As we've done research in Grata and other sources, we get a lot of information about not only the target that we're trying to contact, but potentially competitors in the market as well. So typically, if we have some public information or something recent that happened within the ecosystem, whether it's a competitor being acquired or regulatory changes impacting the market, providing that type of information to the founder, they can, they're well within their right just to take that information, say thanks, and never talk to us again. But if we provide that type of value, demonstrate our interest in the space and our knowledge in the space, that typically will, at least get the attention of the founder in that initial outreach.
Yeah, and I think good point, Sean. And I would add on to that, and this is mostly from our M&A advisory standpoint, is we typically are a bridge oftentimes. And so we build relationships with founders. And I think Sean hit on it a lot. They are busy running their business. They don't know everything that's going on in the market. They don't know all the transactions, regulatory, different things that may be impacting their market. And so we really build a relationship with them, a trusted relationship between them and our customer. And we find that especially for founder-led companies, that raises the comfort level, which makes the investment conversation much easier.
So I've got another one from the audience. This one is, can you elaborate on how you defined your firm's thesis? And so I think this is coming from a place where we talked about, you said we like EVs, we like bioplastics, but how do you even do that research to get there?
I would say at the highest level, that's probably the easiest part in terms of, yeah, I think everybody wants to be skate where the puck is going in terms of, yeah, electrification, solar renewables. We believe the market is going there, and I think the vast majority of folks that we talk to would probably agree with that. So trying to take it from that highest level, acknowledging that we'll never be able to, find the next Tesla or find the next provider of charging stations or the next Mixed. We're probably not going to find someone in the multi-billion-dollar market cap from day one, but then digging a little bit deeper using Grata and other resources to figure out who's supplying product, services, information to those leading players and who's going to benefit from those tailwinds. So, no search is a bad search in my view. If you've got an idea at the very highest level that you think there's a lot of momentum there, you can, dig into that and then do a bunch of the sub searches that Doug and Bobby and the rest of the team walked through today.
Yeah, and just to add to Sean, it's a pretty important question. We actually work a lot with both PEs and corporates to, gather the information. What's happening in the market? What's the TAM? What's the opportunity? And collaborate with them to create a pre-thesis that gets validated through the PE or the corporate, that then turns into the final thesis that we use, as the starting point for looking for the company. So that whole thesis, the approach, the data behind it is really critical towards looking for companies.
Great. So there's one for Grata actually from the audience about international coverage, European coverage, emerging markets, developing world. I know we really focused here on US and Europe centric. Just to answer that from a technical lens, Grata covers virtually every company with an English language website. So we've really focused our coverage in the US, North America, and Europe. We tend to extend into technology and professional services and globalized companies when you're talking outside of the US. So we haven't spent a lot of our time crawling like Asia Pacific type websites and indexing those. So most of our user base finds the most value, I'd say, in US or North America and Europe primarily, as you saw from the demo today. The other one from the audience is, and this is actually a follow-up to the last question, is what other services would you provide if the founder isn't interested in selling their business or partnering? And I would assume that's at the time of your conversation.
Maybe that one's more oriented toward us as advisors. So we provide M&A and organic growth strategy advisory. So we're talking today mostly M&A, but we do a lot of work with companies on their digitalization strategy, their growth vectors, their forward market looking analysis, and their kind of overall digitalization strategy, always focused on their products and services. So we work for both digital companies, industrial tech, and industrial product and OEM companies who are looking to put digital into their products.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty broad set of services beyond just M&A.
And just add to Doug's comment there is, sometimes companies aren't ready to sell. I think they're probably most of the time ready to partner at least, but not ready to sell. And that's fine. We have a conversation with them, maybe say we're ready to sell in 5 years. What do we need to do to get to that point, right? How do we do value creation with a company? And as Doug has pointed out, maybe there's some additional things they need to develop to make them much more valuable in 4 or 5 years when they do want to sell in there. So, the conversations can go in a number of different directions, and not necessarily M&A right away.
Interesting. I think that's a little more obvious from the Momenta side, given the advisory work and the growth strategy and the other type of work you do with companies. But how about from the private equity side, either Bertram or Ara? Founder says, "No, I'm not selling right now."
Yeah, and I think that last point that Bill made, that's this kind of a similar pitch that we say as well. Like we say, love to maintain that relationship. I would say the other piece, and this kind of depends on the company, but a lot of times, the company may not be interested in selling, but they may have an interest in a customer of one of our other companies.
Mhm.
In our portfolio today that produces hydrogen. We have a company in our portfolio that helps compress hydrogen. They're natural customers for each other. So that was kind of a big pitch to them, which was saying, is being a part of the portfolio, you can get access to, a lot of our other companies for business. But even if you're not part of our portfolio, we'd love to have you or a customer or a supplier to one of our other businesses. We like your business. And this is also a strategy of saying, hey, let's keep them close, keep them, think more about us as a fund by working about, how much value we provide as an investor. I'd say that's probably the key, outside of those three things. I mean, what else can we provide? Moral support. Other than that, I mean, that those are probably, I'd say, the three.
Yeah. And Abhiram, your audio broke up a little bit, so I'll just recap it to make sure everyone heard. But it sounded like the gist of it was that your portfolio is your network, and if you can connect someone to a customer or a supplier, it helps their business, it helps your portfolio, and in a way, it's kind of like it's a back-channeled reference check, and they can understand how you are to partner with.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
There are two more questions and we have 3 minutes. I want to try to get to them as well. So I want to move on to the next one. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on scaling a PE BD team effectively?
I can go. Add really smart people like Bobby. When we started at Bertram, we had one business development professional, and today we've got 4 full-time and additional group of interns and support folks who've been helping us over the summer and also while they're at school. And so I think it's a multi-pronged approach, not only having the relationship with the investment bankers and the private equity firms, which we have in spades and have kept those relationships for years, but also having these more thematic focused approaches and, creating processes and the ability to go effectively run these type of campaigns and go reach out for, privately sourced deals. On the investment team, we can help with the industry knowledge and support Bobby and the rest of the BD team with trying to put our best foot forward with these type of conversations. But it's important to have the infrastructure in place and the technology and tools in place, and that starts and ends with our BD team and Bobby. And that's been extraordinarily helpful for us as we've tried to undertake this thematic sourcing approach.
Okay, wanting to the last one we have in the last minute. This one was, how do you choose which approach you should take when first speaking to a potential target? Because you define many different ways of doing it. So it sounds like this person wants to know when do you select which approach?
And I'll kind of jump a little bit into that. We actually read up on the person we're approaching, the founder, and what kind of statements they're making about it, and just trying to relate to them as when we reach out, it's a very, very customized reach out. It might be through our network, through people that know them, or it might be direct with some statement about what's important to them, right? So that's a little bit of the grassroots part of it.
So you're saying go beyond the company, go to the person who you're talking
Yeah. Complement the company. Usually their strategy or what they're talking about relates to the company. Maybe they're they're trying to make their company be a ESG leader in what they're doing. Well, you know, if that's what they're going to conferences on, talking about and everything else, relate to them, you know, maybe relate to them as a person in their business and also relate to their business.
I love that. Let's use that as our closing remarks then. So again, thank you to Bill and Doug at Momenta for helping organize and having the idea for this webinar in the first place. And of course, huge thanks to Sean, Bobby, and Abhiram for participating and being and really showing how they go about sourcing companies. So all the knowledge here is incredible.
Yep.
We're going to send along a recording with anyone in the audience. And if you want to get in touch with any of us, we'll also send contact info. So again, thank you all for attending and taking time today, both our panelists and our audience, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nevin. Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good chatting.